Somewhere beyond the western deserts, where the maps end and the legends begin, there is a city made entirely of brass. Its gates have been sealed for centuries. Its inhabitants have turned to black stone. And if you listen closely, you can still hear the jinn trapped within its walls. This is the story of the explorers who found it. Chapter 1. The Quest Begins. Caliph Harun al-Rashid was sitting in his palace late one night when an old scholar came to him with a story. He spoke of a city beyond the western deserts, a city whose walls were made of brass, so pure that they gleamed like gold in the sunlight. The city was said to contain treasures beyond imagination, rooms full of emeralds, vaults of silver, libraries of ancient books that held knowledge lost to the world for centuries. And at the heart of the city, trapped in a brass vessel, was the most powerful jinni who had ever lived. The Caliph was intrigued. He had heard many stories of lost cities, but this one was different. The scholar spoke with the certainty of a man who had seen the proof with his own eyes. He produced an old map, yellowed and cracked, showing a route across the desert that ended at a circle with the word brass written in faded ink. The Caliph summoned his most trusted commander, a man named Musa ibn Nusa, and ordered him to lead an expedition. "Take 100 of my best soldiers," the Caliph said. "Take guides and scholars and engineers. Find this city for me, bring back its treasures, and if you find the jinni, bring him to me as well." Musa bowed and accepted the mission. He was a practical man, not given to dreams or legends, but he knew better than to refuse a caliph's command. He gathered his men, loaded 5 camels with supplies, and set out from Baghdad at dawn. None of them knew what they were walking into. None of them knew that the city of brass would test them in ways they could not imagine. Chapter 2. The Desert Journey. The expedition traveled west for 20 days. The desert was brutal. The sun was a hammer that pounded down on them from dawn until dusk. The nights were cold and the wind was sharp. They ran out of water on the 12th day and survived only by finding an underground spring that a guide had known about from his childhood. On the 15th day, they came across a pillar in the middle of the desert. It was made of black stone, towering 30 feet into the air. On top of the pillar sat a strange figure, a man with the head of a lion and the body of a serpent, carved from the same black stone. The scholars in the expedition studied it and determined that it was a marker, a signpost left by an ancient civilization to guide travelers toward the city of brass. On the 18th day, they found the first of the sealed jars. There were dozens of them, buried halfway in the sand, their lead seals intact. The soldiers wanted to open them. Musa ordered them not to touch them. He had heard stories about jars that contained jinn, and he had no intention of unleashing something he could not control. On the 20th day they saw it, a glint on the horizon, a flash of gold in the afternoon sun. The city of brass, it rose from the desert like a mirage, its walls towering and impossibly tall. The expedition quickened their pace. After 20 days of sand and sun and silence, they had finally reached their destination. Chapter 3. The Brass Walls. The city was surrounded by walls so tall that they seemed to touch the clouds. The brass gleamed in the sunlight, warm and golden, unmarked by age or weather. There was no gate, the walls were seamless, a single sheet of polished metal that encircled the entire city. The expedition walked all the way around it, looking for an entrance. There was none. Musa ordered his men to search for a hidden door. They pressed against the walls. They tapped for hollow spots. They dug at the base where the brass met the sand. Nothing. The city was sealed as tightly as a drum. One of the scholars suggested climbing the wall. Ropes were thrown. Hooks were lodged in what seemed to be tiny imperfections in the metal. A young soldier volunteered to climb. He went up slowly, hand over hand, his heart pounding. When he reached the top, he looked over the edge and froze. He did not move for a long time. The men below called up to him, asking what he saw. He did not answer. He climbed back down slowly, his face pale. He told them what he had seen. The city inside was perfect. Streets, houses, markets, a palace in the center. Everything intact, everything in its place, and every single inhabitant had been turned to black stones. They stood in the streets where they had been standing when the curse hit. A merchant at his stall, a woman carrying a jug of water, a soldier on guard duty, thousands of people frozen in place, their faces twisted in expressions of terror. Chapter 4. The City of Stone. Musa ordered a hole to be cut in the brass wall. It took the engineers 3 days with their tools, working in shifts under the relentless sun. When the hole was finally large enough to pass through, Musa was the first to enter. The city was silent, not the silence of an empty place, but the silence of a place that had been frozen mid-breath. The streets were clean, the buildings were intact, the fountains were dry, and everywhere he looked there were statues, black stone figures, their faces caught in the final moment of their lives. Some were running, some were kneeling, some had their hands raised as if trying to ward something off. Musa walked through the streets, his soldiers following behind him. They passed a market where the stone merchants stood behind their stalls, their goods turned to stone beside them. They passed a school where stone children sat at stone desks. They passed a mosque where the stone worshippers knelt in rows, facing east, frozen in prayer. The palace stood at the center of the city. It was larger than anything Musa had ever seen, made of white marble and trimmed with gold that still gleamed despite centuries of neglect. The doors were open. Musa walked inside. Chapter 5. The Throne of the Queen. The throne room of the palace was vast. The ceilings were high enough to hold clouds. The walls were covered in murals depicting the history of the city. Musa walked slowly through the room, his footsteps echoing in the emptiness. And there, on the throne at the far end of the hall, sat a woman. She was not made of stone. She was alive. She was old, impossibly old, with white hair that fell to her waist and skin like parchment. Her eyes were closed. She was breathing so slowly that Musa had to watch for a full minute to be sure she was alive. He approached her carefully. She opened her eyes. They were the color of amber, and they held centuries of sorrow. She spoke without moving her lips. Her voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "You have found the city of brass," she said. "I have been waiting for you. I have been waiting for someone to come for a very long time." Musa asked her who she was. She told him she was the queen of the jinn. Not a jinni herself, but a mortal woman who had been chosen to rule over the jinn after an ancient war. The city had been her home. Her subjects had been humans and jinn living together in peace until the curse came. She told Musa the story of the city, how a powerful sorcerer had grown jealous of her rule, how he had summoned a demon from the depths of the earth and unleashed it upon the city. The demon had turned everyone to stone with a single word. Everyone except the queen, who was protected by an ancient charm. Chapter 6. The Sorcerer's Revenge. The queen told Musa the full story. The sorcerer had been her advisor, a man she had trusted completely. He had helped her build the city. He had advised her on matters of magic and diplomacy. She had thought he was loyal, but the sorcerer wanted the throne for himself. He wanted to rule over the jinn. He had spent years preparing a spell that would destroy the city and everyone in it, leaving only the queen alive to witness her failure. He unleashed the spell on the night of the summer solstice, when the veil between worlds was thinnest. The demon he summoned was ancient and powerful. It spoke a single word, a word in the language of creation, the first language that existed before the world was made. That word turned every living thing in the city to stone. The transformation was instantaneous. One moment, the streets were full of people going about their lives. The next moment, they were statues. The sorcerer expected the queen to die along with her subjects, but the charm she wore, given to her by her mother, protected her. She survived. She watched her city die. She watched her people become stone. She sat on her throne and waited for deliverance that never came. For centuries she waited, and then Musa arrived. Chapter 7. The Search for the Genie. Musa asked the queen about the genie the Caliph had mentioned, the one said to be trapped in a brass vessel at the heart of the city. The queen's eyes flickered with something that might have been amusement. "That genie," she said, "is the sorcerer. He tricked me once. When he unleashed the demon, he expected it to obey him. But the demon was older and more powerful than he knew. It turned on him. It trapped him in a brass vessel and sealed him in the deepest vault of the palace. He has been there ever since." Musa asked if the sorcerer's genie could be freed. The queen said yes, but it would not be wise. The sorcerer had spent centuries in darkness. He would be mad with rage. If freed, he would destroy everything he could reach. Musa decided to leave the brass vessel where it was. He had no desire to unleash a centuries-old sorcerer on the world. But the queen had another request. She asked Musa to find the demon that had cursed her city. The demon was still out there, sleeping somewhere beneath the sands. If it could be destroyed, the curse on her people might be lifted. The city might live again. Chapter 8. The Demon's Lair. Musa and his soldiers searched the desert around the city for 7 days. They found caves, they found ruins, they found the bones of creatures that had no name, but they did not find the demon. On the 8th day, a young soldier stumbled into a sinkhole and fell into an underground chamber. The chamber was vast and dark. At its center, chained to the floor with links of enchanted silver, was a creature made entirely of shadow. It had no shape. It had no face. It was simply darkness given form. The soldier screamed. The demon stirred. Its voice was the sound of 1,000 whispers layered on top of each other. It spoke the same word it had spoken to curse the city. The soldier's legs turned to stone up to his knees. His companions dragged him out of the chamber before the word could spread further. Musa looked down at the chamber from the edge of the sinkhole. The demon was too powerful to fight directly, but the queen had given him a weapon. A small vial of water from a spring that flowed beneath her throne. Holy water, she had called it. Blessed by the first jinn before they left the world. Musa poured the water into the chamber. It turned to steam before it hit the floor. The demon shrieked. The chains holding it began to glow. The steam rose and filled the chamber, and the demon's form began to dissolve. It fought, it screamed, it spoke words that cracked the walls. But the holy water was stronger. The demon dissolved into nothing. The chains fell empty to the floor. The curse was broken. Chapter 9. The city wakes. Back in the city of brass, the statues began to move. It started with a finger, then a hand, then an entire arm. The stone merchant at his stall blinked. The woman carrying the jug of water took a step forward. The children in the school looked up from their desks. The worshippers in the mosque raised their heads from their prayers. The color returned to the city. The stone became skin. The black became life. People looked at each other in confusion. They remembered the moment of the curse. They remembered the terror. And then they looked at the stranger standing in their streets, a man from Baghdad covered in desert dust, smiling through his exhaustion. Musa walked through the crowd. People touched his arms and his face, checking that he was real. They asked him questions in a language he did not understand. But the queen came out of her palace and spoke to them in their own tongue. She told them what Musa had done. She told them that the demon was destroyed and the curse was broken forever. The people of the city of brass wept. They sang, they danced in the streets. They brought out food and drink that had been preserved for centuries by the magic of the curse. They feasted and celebrated late into the night. And at the center of it all, Musa sat at the queen's table, telling stories of Baghdad and the Caliph and the journey that had brought him here. Chapter 10. The Queen's Gift. The queen was grateful. She owed Musa everything. Without him, her city would have remained frozen forever. A monument to her failure, she offered him anything he wanted. Gold, jewels, knowledge, power. Musa thought carefully. He had come to the city at the Caliph's command. The Caliph wanted treasure. The Caliph wanted the genie. The Caliph wanted proof that the city was real. Musa asked the queen for 3 things. 1. Enough treasure to fill 20 camels, so the Caliph would be satisfied. 2. A written account of the city's history, so the scholars of Baghdad could study it. 3. A lock of the queen's hair, as a token of their alliance. The queen agreed to all 3 requests. She gave him treasure beyond his wildest dreams, gold coins, silver ingots, jewels that glowed with their own inner light. She gave him scrolls written by the city's greatest scholars, detailing centuries of knowledge. And she cut a lock of her white hair and placed it in his hand. She also gave him something he had not asked for, a warning. She told him that the brass vessel containing the sorcerer was still in the vault beneath her palace. It could not be destroyed, it could not be opened without great danger. She asked Musa to tell the Caliph that some doors should remain closed forever. Musa promised to deliver the message. Chapter 11. The Return Journey. The journey back to Baghdad was easier than the journey out. The desert seemed less hostile, the water lasted longer, the guides navigated with confidence. Musa and his men traveled with 20 camels loaded with treasure, their hearts full of the story they would tell. When they arrived at the gates of Baghdad, the whole city came out to see them. The Caliph himself descended from his throne to embrace Musa. He had begun to fear that the expedition had been lost. To see them return, laden with treasure and alive, was more than he had hoped for. Musa gave the Caliph the treasure. He gave him the scrolls. He gave him the queen's lock of hair. And he gave him the warning about the sorcerer in the brass vessel. The Caliph listened carefully. He ordered the lock of hair to be preserved in the royal treasury. He ordered the scrolls to be translated and copied. And he ordered a new wing to be built on the palace to house the treasure from the city of brass. But he also ordered that no expedition should ever return to the city. The queen had asked for peace. the Caliph would give it to her. Chapter 12. The Legend Lives. The story of the city of brass spread across the world. Travelers told it in the markets of Damascus and Cairo and Samarkand. Poets turned it into verses. Scholars debated whether the city was real or a fable. Some said it was hidden beneath the sands, still waiting to be found. Others said it had vanished after Musa's visit, its work finally done. The queen lived on in her restored city, ruling over her people with wisdom and patience. The brass walls still gleamed in the sunlight. The streets were still full of life. And deep beneath the palace, in a vault sealed with lead and silver, the sorcerer's vessel sat in eternal darkness, dreaming of a freedom that would never come. Musa grew old in Baghdad, a hero to his people. He told the story of the city of brass to his children and his grandchildren. He always ended the same way. There are places in this world, he would say, that should not be disturbed. I found one once. I walked through its streets. I saw its frozen people, and I learned that some treasures are better left buried. The city of brass taught me that, and I will never forget it. The end.